Welcome to Everyday Cooking. In this series, I'd like to emphasize aspects of cooking which will help you feed yourself and your family. As a professional chef, I may go a bit faster than you do with a knife, but don't be too impressed by it. As long as it's good at the end, that's what's important. I was born in France in 1935 in a town called Bourg-en-Bresse, not too far from Lyon. During the Second World War, my father joined the resistance. My mother was a waitress in a small restaurant. Later on, my mother opened a whole string of little restaurants. The last one was called the Pélican, small restaurant in Lyon. She taught me to be very frugal in the kitchen, and I'm still very miserly in the kitchen today. Anything that most people will throw out, I will keep that. I store these items in an empty half-gallon milk container and keep them in the freezer. I began my apprenticeship at age 13 and eventually worked my way up to Paris, a restaurant in Paris, and to the kitchen of the French Prime Minister at that time, Charles de Gaulle. I decided to come to America for a year or two, and that was at the end of 1959. When I arrived in New York, I went to the Pavilion, which was an extraordinary French restaurant, where Pierre Frenet, the executive chef, told me that I could start the next day. After that, I took a job at Howard Johnson. That's where I learned a new way to cook, using ingredients that I'd never used before. So you want to bang the dough a little bit like that?
That's a wonderful way of doing it, of just banging it like that.
Yeah.
And that spreads it out as you bang it.
Yes.
I learned that in Paris.
I met Julia Child in 1960. She had just moved back to the US from France. We remained friends until her death in 2004, and I still miss her. And you can see here the flakiness of that dough. I mean, it's falling almost like a puff paste.
That is good, Jack.
Oh, you dip that in butter?
This is dipped in butter, and that's what makes it so good.
Julia and I made many shows together, and we had a great deal of fun. I've continued to teach through my book and series, including Art and Soul, completed this year. Make sure that you put your thumb when you do this. My emphasis is on technique and simple, good food, which is at the core of any good chef.
Jacques Pépin, you're the most generous person that I know.
There is no chef or home cook that hasn't been influenced and excited by you and your work.
I went to a bookstore and found La Technique, and that book saved my life.
I read that book and instantly felt a connection with you.
Every time I pick up the chef's knife, I think of you. Because of course, you taught us all how to use one.
You also taught the entire staff how to butcher a whole lamb.
You've given the gift of French cooking to so many people, and they've made it their own cooking, and that's everywhere around the world.
You're my hero, Jacques.
For the last 40 or 50 years, I've been making new recipes and trying new ideas in different cuisine. And the source of my inspiration is often seeing product at the market, reading something in a magazine or in a book that can trigger an idea. Sometimes actually I'm just inspired by talking with other chefs, friend of mine, we cook together. But there is never a lack of inspiration if you keep your eyes open. But perhaps the greatest inspiration and joy for me is ordinary cooking for and with my family. You know, it's nice to be in the kitchen, but it's better to be in the dining room. And you know, the love of food and cooking is passed down from generation to generation with favorite recipe at the heart of every family. What do you say to that?
Happy cooking.
Happy cooking.
Happy cooking.
Should I bring that little bottle of champagne?